If you pause for just a moment and look around, you'll see minds at work in 1,000 different ways. One person hums while they organize their desk. Another stares out the window, tracing patterns in the clouds. Someone else dives deep into a single idea and won't look up until it's perfect. Human thinking is not one size fits all. It never has been. Yet for generations, we tried to pretend it was. Today, we're going to explore a truth that scientists, educators, and autistic people themselves have been sharing for decades. Autism is not a flaw in humanity's design. It's part of humanity's design. Autism is a neurotype, a natural variation in how the brain perceives, processes, and connects with the world. In this journey, we'll unpack what autism really is and what it definitely isn't. We'll travel from outdated ideas to modern understanding, from stereotypes to real stories, and from fear to acceptance. Most of all, we'll remember that every statistic represents a person, a classmate, a friend, a coworker, a family member, each with their own unique way of seeing life's details. The story of autism didn't always begin with the lens of neurodiversity. In fact, the term autism first appeared in the early 1900s, derived from the Greek word autos, meaning self. Doctors used it to describe children who seemed withdrawn into their own private worlds. But these early researchers often misunderstood what they were seeing. In the 1940s, two doctors, Leo Kanner in the United States and Hans Asperger in Austria, both described children who processed the world differently. Kanner focused on challenges, labeling autism a rare and severe disorder. Asperger, on the other hand, noticed strengths, detailed thinking, profound honesty, and incredible creativity. Unfortunately, history paid more attention to Kanner's framing. For decades, autism was treated as a pathology, something to diagnose, manage, and, if possible, cure. This led to a dark period where parents were often wrongly blamed. Some even pushed the harmful and now disproven theory of refrigerator mothers, suggesting that emotionally distant mothers had caused their children's autism. These families lived under a cloud of unfair shame, and the autistic children at the center of it all were rarely listened to. Their own voices were lost in the noise of medical theories. Over time, thankfully, research began to change that narrative. By the late 20th century, scientists understood that autism was neurological, not something caused by parenting styles. Brain imaging revealed genuine differences in connectivity, sensory processing, and attention patterns. But the most important transformation didn't come from labs. It came from autistic people themselves. In the 1990s, autistic adults began to speak out collectively. They wrote essays, organized conferences, and created the first online communities. Their message was powerful and clear. We don't want to be cured, we want to be understood. From that movement, a new framework was born: neurodiversity. This concept recognizes that human brains develop along many different, but equally valid, natural paths. Just as biodiversity strengthens an ecosystem, neurodiversity strengthens society. Autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other variations are not defects, but differences, each with its own unique set of advantages and challenges. This shift was revolutionary. Instead of asking, "How can we make autistic people more normal?" we began asking, "How can we make society more inclusive and accommodating?" And that is the lens through which we will view everything that follows in this series. Before we go any further, let's talk about language, because it really matters. You might hear people say "person with autism," while others say "autistic person." Both phrases are used with the intention of respect. However, many autistic advocates prefer identity-first language, autistic person. They see autism not as an accessory they carry, but as a fundamental part of who they are, as inseparable as being left-handed or having a certain eye color. It's not something they have, it's something they are. Throughout this series, we'll use both terms, always guided by respect for individual preferences. To get a better sense of this, let's try a quick thought experiment. Imagine stepping into a bustling cafeteria. You hear the hum of conversations, the clatter of trays, and the buzz of fluorescent lights. For most people, these sounds blend together into a manageable background noise. But for an autistic person, each sound might arrive at full volume, layered on top of each other like competing songs in a chaotic symphony. The lights might flicker like strobes. The smell of different foods might be sharp and overwhelming. This isn't an exaggeration. It's a real difference in sensory processing. Yet within that same sensitivity lies incredible potential. It's an ability to notice details others miss, to recall subtle patterns with amazing clarity, and to create with a unique kind of precision. Autism is a rich tapestry woven with threads of both intensity and beauty. Understanding that delicate balance is the heart of this story. Every great misunderstanding starts with a story told the wrong way. For autism, those stories were written long before autistic people had the chance to speak for themselves. So to understand what autism isn't, we have to peel back the myths, one by one, and see how they've shaped public opinion for generations. Let's start with myth number 1. Autism is a childhood condition. For years, media and even medical guides pictured autism as something that only happened in children, usually boys, often white, always young. You've probably seen the stereotype, a child who doesn't speak, who lines up their toys, who avoids eye contact. That image became the public face of autism. But here's the thing, autism doesn't just vanish when a person grows up. Autistic children become autistic adults. They go to university, they start families, they lead companies, or they explore the world on their own terms. Many adults, particularly women and people of color, reach their 30s, 40s, or even 50s before finally realizing that the differences they've felt all their lives have a name. A late diagnosis doesn't mean sudden autism. It means years of unnoticed neurodivergence, often hidden behind learned coping strategies. When we recognize that autism is lifelong, not just a childhood phase, we start to see people, not just age brackets. Now for myth number 2, and this one is perhaps the most painful misconception of all, that autistic people lack empathy. What research and countless lived experiences actually show is something much more nuanced. Autistic people often feel empathy intensely. They might struggle to express it in the conventional ways society expects, through specific facial expressions, a certain tone of voice, or small talk, but the emotional understanding is still there, and often it's amplified. Psychologists now talk about the double empathy problem. This idea suggests that communication difficulties between autistic and non-autistic people don't come from a lack of empathy on one side, but from both sides having different communication norms. Imagine 2 radios tuned to slightly different frequencies. Each one is broadcasting clearly, but the signals only partially overlap. The solution isn't to fix one of the radios, it's for both to adjust and meet in the middle. Recognizing this simple fact shifts the entire conversation from one of blame to one of genuine understanding. Let's move on to myth number 3. Autism has a single cause. For decades, there has been a persistent search for one single trigger. A virus, a chemical, a vaccine, a parenting mistake. But science just doesn't work that way. We now know that autism arises from incredibly complex interactions of genetics, prenatal development, and environmental influences. There is no single trigger. Twin and family studies show a strong heritability, but there isn't a single autism gene. Instead, there are hundreds of small genetic variations that together shape how the brain wires itself. The myth of a singular cause only fuels fear. It encourages parents to search for culprits rather than supports, and to chase so-called miracle cures instead of embracing neurodiversity for what it is. Real understanding begins when we stop hunting for someone or something to blame and start building systems of inclusion that support everyone. This brings us to myth number 4. Autism can and should be cured. The word cure appeared often in old campaigns, on glossy posters, in charity ads, all set to heartbreaking piano music. They asked for donations to end autism. But here's the truth. Autism is not a disease. You can't cure a neurotype any more than you can cure being tall or being bilingual. The very idea of a cure assumes that the goal is to erase autism rather than support autistic people. It sends a message to children that their authentic selves are wrong. It tells adults that their acceptance depends on pretending to be someone they're not. Acceptance work completely flips the script. Instead of curing autism, we should be curing ignorance. Instead of erasing differences, we should be building accessibility, creating sensory-friendly classrooms, workplaces that respect different communication preferences, and communities that celebrate honesty and deep focus instead of punishing them. That's what real progress looks like. Next up, myth number 5. All autistic people are either geniuses or intellectually disabled. Hollywood loves extremes, doesn't it? We see the silent child who never speaks a word, or the math prodigy who solves impossible equations on a chalkboard. And while both of those portrayals can exist, they represent only a tiny fraction of the actual autistic spectrum. The vast majority of autistic people live somewhere in the wide space between those extremes, each with their own individual strengths and their own individual struggles. Intelligence can't be measured just by verbal tests or quick reasoning. Many autistic people show deep conceptual understanding but express it in different ways, through art, through design, or through incredible pattern recognition. The idea that autism equals either genius or incapacity completely erases the majority of people who don't fit into those neat little boxes. Understanding autism means letting go of those cinematic shortcuts and meeting each person exactly where they are. Myth number 6 is another deeply hurtful one. Autistic people can't form relationships. They can't connect. Few phrases wound deeper than that one. But the reality is that autistic people absolutely can and do love, empathize, and form lasting, profound bonds. What often differs is the language of connection. Some might prefer direct honesty over polite, surface-level small talk. Others might communicate their affection through shared interests, comforting routines, or just a quiet, steady presence. Relationships may require a bit of translation between different neurotypes, but they can be incredibly profound. When partners, friends, and family take the time to learn each other's unique communication rhythms, the results are extraordinary. You find trust without pretense and understanding without masks. Love doesn't depend on decoding every single facial cue. It depends on mutual respect. And finally, myth number 7. Autism looks the same in everyone. There's a phrase you hear a lot in the community, because it's so true. If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Autism intersects with every aspect of identity: gender, race, culture, and personality. Girls and women, for example, have been historically underdiagnosed because they often learn to mimic their peers to blend in, hiding their internal confusion or anxiety beneath a practiced smile. In many cultures, directness, a trait common among autistic people, is considered rude, so individuals learn to mask and suppress their natural communication style. Cultural expectations can definitely shape how autism appears on the surface, but the core experience often remains consistent: a brain that's wired for deep focus, unique perception, and sometimes overwhelming sensory input. When we acknowledge this incredible diversity, we stop asking people to fit into a single, narrow mold. These misconceptions don't just distort our understanding, they have real-world consequences. They shape policy, education, healthcare, and our everyday lives. When a teacher believes an autistic student lacks empathy, they might misinterpret frustration as defiance. When an employer assumes an autistic adult can't handle teamwork, opportunities disappear before they even begin. When parents are told their child must be fixed, love can become conditional rather than unconditional. The cost of these myths is measured in lost confidence, delayed diagnoses, and years of unnecessary shame. But the antidote is powerful. Accurate information, genuine empathy, and most importantly, listening to autistic voices themselves. Imagine a camera lens. When it's slightly out of focus, everything looks distorted. You might think there's something wrong with the subject you're looking at, when in fact, it's the lens that needs adjusting. That's what these myths are. They're blurred lenses. Once you refocus, you see that autistic people have always been here, teaching, inventing, parenting, creating art, and running businesses. They've built communities, they've challenged norms, and they have contributed immeasurably to human progress. The clearer the lens, the more vibrant the picture becomes. So far, we've peeled away the myths to reveal what autism isn't. In our next video, we'll dive into what it is, how the autistic brain processes the world, how perception differs, and how those differences create both challenges and remarkable strengths. Understanding begins not with fear, but with curiosity. Let's look closer. Start with ambient, thoughtful music. Imagine looking down at a sprawling city at night. Every tiny light is a neuron, billions of them flickering and communicating, forming highways of thought, emotion, and perception. Now, picture another city, built from the exact same materials, but with a different layout, unique routes, different traffic patterns, specialized shortcuts. That's the autistic brain, not a broken city, not a lesser one, just wired differently. For a long time, the map of this city was a mystery, but in the last 20 years, neuroscience has started to chart its unique pathways. What we're finding isn't some single autism center, but a difference in the entire network, how various regions of the brain talk to each other. Some connections are like superhighways, faster, stronger, and more precise. Others are more like scenic country roads, taking their time to process the view. This unique wiring explains so much. It's why an autistic person might spot a tiny detail or a hidden pattern that everyone else misses. It's also why a fast-paced group conversation can feel like trying to navigate a chaotic multi-lane roundabout during rush hour, completely exhausting. The autistic brain often prioritizes depth over speed. It doesn't just skim the surface. It dives deep, seeking clarity and consistency. From the outside, this intense focus might look like an obsession, but from the inside, it feels like harmony, like everything is finally clicking into place. Let's talk about the senses. Imagine your world has a volume knob for sight, sound, touch, and smell, but this knob has no off switch, and it's constantly being fiddled with. For some autistic people, every sense is turned up to 11. Fluorescent lights aren't just bright. They flicker like a strobe light. A scratchy tag on a shirt doesn't just annoy. It feels like sandpaper against the skin. A background hum that most people tune out can swell into a deafening roar. For others, the world can feel muted and distant, as if experienced through a thick fog. They might seek out stronger sensations, brighter colors, tighter hugs, or rhythmic movements like rocking, just to feel grounded and balanced in their own bodies. This isn't a simple case of being too sensitive or not sensitive enough. It's a dynamic, fluctuating experience that can change with stress, fatigue, or the environment. When society sees sensory overload and calls it a meltdown or misbehavior, it's punishing biology. But when we create more inclusive spaces with dimmable lights, quiet rooms, or flexible clothing, we're not just making an accommodation. We're inviting people to participate fully in the world. Navigating the social world can feel like being a tourist in a country where you only partially speak the language. You might know the vocabulary, but you miss all the idioms, the slang, and the cultural inside jokes. Non-autistic communication runs on a whole host of unwritten rules, subtle shifts in tone, micro-expressions, sarcasm, and unspoken expectations. Autistic people often have to learn these rules consciously, through careful observation, rather than picking them up intuitively. For instance, direct eye contact might feel intense and invasive, not like a sign of connection. Small talk can seem pointless and confusing when a direct question feels more efficient and respectful. This isn't about a lack of empathy or a desire to be rude. It's simply a different social operating system. When these two systems, autistic and non-autistic, interact without understanding, you get static and miscommunication. But the connection isn't lost. It just needs a translator. A teacher who allows a student to write their answer instead of speaking, a manager who gives clear, literal instructions, or a friend who values honesty over social niceties. These are the bridges that turn isolation into genuine connection. There's a powerful concept that helps explain this intense, focused way of experiencing the world. It's called monotropism. Think of attention as a flashlight beam. Most people's attention is like a floodlight, spreading a diffuse glow over many things at once. They can chat while cooking, listen to a podcast, and keep an eye on their kids. Autistic attention, however, often works like a laser pointer. It narrows into a single, intense beam, absorbing every detail of one thing. In this state of monofocus, the outside world can fade away. Time dissolves. It's where deep learning, incredible creativity, and profound joy happen. But the challenge comes when that laser focus is suddenly interrupted. It's not just an annoyance. It can be physically jarring, like being ripped out of a dream. To an outsider, resistance to a sudden change in plans might look like stubbornness, but on the inside, it feels like having your favorite song cut off mid-chorus. Understanding monotropism is key. It means giving a heads up before a transition, respecting the need to finish a thought, and creating a world that values deep focus instead of constantly demanding we multitask. All of this, the intense sensory processing, the deep focus, the manual translation of social cues, takes an incredible amount of mental energy. This is where executive function comes in. Executive function is like the brain's project manager. It helps you organize tasks, start projects, manage your time, and switch between activities. In the autistic brain, this manager is working overtime, juggling a massive cognitive load. It's not laziness or carelessness, it's a processing bottleneck. Imagine a powerful computer running a dozen resource-heavy programs at once. It can still do everything, but it's going to be slower and more prone to crashing. This is why things like routines, visual schedules, and checklists aren't just helpful, they're essential tools. They offload some of that mental planning, freeing up precious energy for creativity, connection, and just living. And when that energy completely runs out, it can lead to something called autistic burnout. This isn't just feeling tired. It's a profound state of exhaustion, physical, mental, and emotional, often caused by the long-term stress of masking autistic traits or being in a constant state of sensory overload. Burnout isn't a personal failure. It's a signal that the demands of the environment have exceeded the system's capacity. The solution isn't to push through it. It's rest, acceptance, and learning to advocate for what you need. Let's also talk about how communication is so much more than just spoken words. Many autistic people find their most authentic voice through other means: writing, art, music, or even movement. For some, spoken language might develop later, or it might disappear completely during times of high stress. Others may use tools like AAC or augmentative and alternative communication devices to express complex thoughts and feelings. Our society has a bad habit of equating how well someone speaks with how intelligent they are. This is a deeply flawed and harmful assumption. A person who is non-speaking might be composing breathtaking poetry on a tablet. A highly verbal person might find themselves completely unable to form a sentence when overwhelmed. Communication isn't about volume or fluency. It's about conveying meaning. True inclusion happens when we learn to listen beyond the spoken word, when we give people the time and space to type, to gesture, or even to be silent. It's about recognizing that intelligence has 1,000 different voices. Another hallmark of autistic cognition is an incredible ability to recognize patterns. It's like seeing the underlying blueprint of the world. Whether it's in music, math, language, or nature, patterns provide a sense of order, comfort, and deep understanding. This is the scaffolding on which autistic minds often build their knowledge. This can manifest as an extraordinary memory for facts, a gift for logical reasoning, or a uniquely creative approach to solving problems. You see it in the artist who gets lost in the intricate relationships between colors, or the programmer who sees the elegant logic flowing through lines of code. The world often mistakes this need for precision as rigidity. But for many autistic minds, precision is a form of art. It's beautiful. When we look back through history, many of the greatest innovators and artists showed traits that align with the autism spectrum today. Recognizing this doesn't romanticize autism, it humanizes it. It's a powerful reminder that nearly every major breakthrough, whether in science or the arts, relied on people who dared to think differently. So what about emotions? There's a persistent myth that autistic people lack emotion or empathy. The reality is often the complete opposite. Emotions in autism are frequently described as being incredibly intense, almost all or nothing. Joy isn't just happiness. It's a full-body euphoria. Anxiety isn't just worry. It's a vibration that runs through every nerve. Sadness can feel like a physical weight, because the same wiring that amplifies sights and sounds also amplifies internal feelings. Regulating these intense emotions can be a huge challenge. An autistic person might cry from overwhelming happiness or laugh when they're nervous, which can confuse people who are used to more conventional emotional expressions. But underneath these sometimes mismatched signals is a raw, unfiltered authenticity. When we create safe environments where that emotional honesty is met with understanding instead of judgment, we build a powerful bridge of empathy that flows in both directions. We learn that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's the most direct path to connection. For decades, the language used to describe autism has been centered around deficits. Deficits in social skills, deficits in communication, deficits in flexible thinking. But what if we reframed every single one of those deficits as a difference with a corresponding strength? Difficulty with small talk? That often comes with a deep appreciation for honesty and meaningful conversation. A need for routine? That predictability reduces cognitive load and fosters incredible reliability and consistency. An intense focus on a special interest? That's not a deficit. That's the path to mastery and expertise. When you stop seeing deficits and start seeing differences, your entire perspective shifts. You stop asking, how can we fix this person to make them conform? And you start asking, what conditions does this person need to thrive? That single question has the power to transform education, the workplace, and all of our relationships. So ultimately, what does it mean to call autism a neurotype instead of a disorder or a disease? It means recognizing that diversity in how our brains are wired is a natural and valuable part of human variation, just like diversity in our genes or our cultures. The autistic neurotype isn't a broken version of the normal brain. It's a distinct and valid configuration of attention, perception, and emotion. It's personality, right down to the level of the neurons. A diagnosis is still important. It's a key that can unlock access to vital support, accommodations, and legal protections. But identity is what allows for pride, for community, and for a sense of belonging. When an autistic person says, "This is just how my brain works," they are taking ownership of their story. And that's a power that no medical chart can ever capture. The human brain isn't a binary switch. It's a vast spectrum of infinite colors and shades. One autistic person might need complete silence to think, while another thrives with loud music. One might struggle to read facial expressions but have an incredible capacity for empathy through writing. Another might be a brilliant public speaker but rely on a rigid daily structure to function. All of them are autistic. The spectrum isn't a single line from high functioning to low functioning. It's a vast, multidimensional landscape with countless valid paths. When we finally start seeing that full landscape, we can stop labeling people and start asking what each unique individual needs and what incredible gifts they have to offer. We've taken a journey into the wiring, rhythms, and strengths of the autistic mind. But autism doesn't exist in a vacuum. In our next video, we'll explore the incredible diversity within the spectrum itself, how culture, gender, co-occurring conditions, and life experiences create countless different ways to be autistic, and why celebrating that diversity makes our world richer, stronger, and more compassionate for everyone. If the autistic brain is a city, then the autism spectrum is the map of countless unique neighborhoods, each with its own streets, patterns, and rhythms. The word spectrum itself can be a bit misleading. Many people picture a straight line, with mild autism on one end and severe on the other. But that's not how it works. The spectrum isn't a single line at all. It's a multi-dimensional landscape. Imagine a constellation of different traits, where each one varies in intensity from person to person. Think about sensory processing, social communication, motor coordination, attention patterns, emotional regulation, and deep passions. Each of these is like a separate axis, and they all overlap in an infinite number of combinations. This means every autistic person has a totally unique profile, their own special map within this vast spectrum. To understand this diversity, let's consider two autistic individuals. One might speak fluently, enjoy social gatherings, and navigate daily routines with ease, but experience intense sensory overload from bright lights or loud sounds. Another person might be non-speaking, thrive on a highly structured schedule, and prefer solitude, yet possess an extraordinary talent for mathematics or art. Both are autistic. Both are navigating life with the same neurotype, but it expresses itself in completely different ways. This is why rigid labels like high-functioning and low-functioning just don't work. They oversimplify a complex reality and create harmful stereotypes. There's no single metric that can possibly capture the unique combination of strengths, challenges, preferences, and needs that define an individual. Gender also plays a huge role in how autism is expressed and recognized. Historically, boys were diagnosed far more often than girls. Why? Because girls often learn to mask or camouflage their traits. They might meticulously mimic their peers, suppress natural self-soothing behaviors, or adopt social scripts just to fit in. As a result, countless autistic girls and women go undiagnosed until they are teenagers or even well into adulthood. Just because the traits are hidden doesn't mean they're not there. It just means societal expectations and gender norms have obscured them. Recognizing these gender differences is crucial for providing better support and broadening our entire understanding of the spectrum. Culture is another powerful influence. What's considered normal social behavior varies dramatically around the world. Direct, straightforward communication might be valued in one culture, but seen as rude in another. The rules around eye contact, personal space, and gestures are different everywhere. When diagnostic tools are based on a single, Western-centric standard, many autistic people from other cultural backgrounds get overlooked. To truly understand autism globally, we need culturally responsive practices that recognize and respect these different ways of being. And autism never exists in a vacuum. It intersects with so many other parts of a person's identity, like their gender identity, race, socioeconomic status, and any co-occurring conditions. Some autistic people might also have ADHD, anxiety, depression, or learning differences. Others may identify as LGBTQ+. Each of these intersections shapes their life experiences, their access to services, and their visibility within their communities. Understanding these layers is absolutely essential for educators, policymakers, and caregivers. True inclusion isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. It has to be nuanced, flexible, and attentive to each person's unique context. So let's circle back to that myth of a linear spectrum, from mild to severe. It's just not accurate. A better way to think about it is like a color wheel instead of a straight line. Each trait, sensory, communication, motor, cognitive, and emotional, is its own axis radiating outward. And the intensity along one axis doesn't predict the intensity along another. For example, someone could have intense sensory sensitivities, but also have very strong social communication skills. Another person might be nonverbal yet demonstrate extraordinary logic and creativity. The spectrum is multidimensional, and every single person occupies a unique point within that space. One common and fascinating feature across the spectrum is the presence of special interests. These are intense, focused passions for specific subjects. They aren't just hobbies, they are a source of comfort, structure, and immense joy. They can also fuel remarkable expertise. Society often misunderstands these interests, labeling them as obsessions or distractions. But in reality, they are windows into incredible cognitive depth and powerful problem-solving abilities. When we create space for these interests to flourish, we support learning, self-esteem, and innovation. Autistic people often contribute groundbreaking insights precisely because of this focused, passionate way of thinking. Communication within the spectrum is just as diverse. Some autistic people speak fluently, while others rely on alternative methods, like typing, sign language, pictures, or specialized devices. Our traditional ways of measuring intelligence, which often lean heavily on verbal fluency, can completely underestimate the intelligence, social understanding, and creativity of those who communicate differently. When we learn to value all modes of communication, we ensure that every autistic voice, spoken or otherwise, is heard and respected. Embracing neurodiversity benefits everyone. When you have diverse brains working together, you get diverse solutions. People with different cognitive styles often excel at spotting patterns, innovating, and challenging old assumptions in ways that others might miss. Inclusion isn't about charity, it's a strategic advantage. Our communities thrive when they harness the power of all perspectives, both autistic and non-autistic. Educators who understand the spectrum can create classrooms that foster engagement and creativity for all students. Employers who embrace neurodiverse teams often discover exceptional problem-solving skills and incredible loyalty. Labels can be useful. They can open doors to services, accommodations, and a sense of community. But they can also limit our imagination. Every autistic individual is so much more than a diagnosis. They are storytellers, artists, engineers, caregivers, leaders, friends, and family members. Understanding the spectrum means seeing beyond the checklists and connecting with the rich, multifaceted human being behind the label. Ultimately, the diversity within the autism spectrum is a mirror of the diversity within humanity itself. Every autistic person brings their own unique combination of traits, preferences, strengths, and challenges. Some may require daily support, while others need very little. Some thrive in social situations, while others need solitude to recharge. Each life is unique and every mind is valuable. Recognizing the true diversity of the spectrum reshapes how we approach everything, from education and healthcare to employment and social policy. Inclusion isn't an afterthought. It is the very foundation of a thriving, compassionate, and innovative society. Now that we've explored the incredible diversity of the spectrum, we're ready to shift our focus. Next, we'll dive into the strengths, challenges, and supports that define daily life for autistic people. We'll look at how we can build environments that empower rather than constrain, and how our communities can benefit from truly embracing difference. Autism is often described through a lens of deficits, what someone supposedly can't do, can't understand, or can't manage. But the truth is, autism is a complex blend of both incredible strengths and real challenges. Every single person, autistic or not, has both. Today, we're going to explore what makes autistic people so resilient, gifted, and capable, while also looking at the hurdles they face and, most importantly, the supports that can unlock their full potential. Many autistic people possess extraordinary strengths. Think about exceptional pattern recognition, an incredible attention to detail, a deep, long-term focus, and a remarkable memory for specific information. These aren't just quirks. They are powerful abilities. These traits can manifest as exceptional talent in music, mathematics, science, technology, art, or writing. For instance, someone might spot a tiny coding error that everyone else missed, or recall a historical fact with perfect clarity decades after learning it. Others might perceive a unique beauty in repetitive patterns, translating them into breathtaking music or intricate designs. This creativity often springs from a fundamentally different way of thinking. When society makes room for and encourages these divergent ideas, autistic individuals can drive innovations that might otherwise never see the light of day. Beyond these cognitive skills, many autistic people are highly principled, honest, and dependable. They deeply value truth, fairness, and consistency, making them incredibly reliable colleagues, friends, and collaborators. These strengths aren't rare exceptions. They are integral to the neurotype. Recognizing and celebrating them is just as vital as acknowledging the challenges. Of course, alongside these strengths, autism brings its own set of challenges. These are often amplified by environments that simply weren't designed with neurodiversity in mind. Sensory overload is a major one. Imagine being bombarded by bright fluorescent lights, a cacophony of loud sounds, strong smells, or the discomfort of certain textures. It can be completely overwhelming for an autistic person. Social interaction can also be a significant challenge. Trying to read subtle body language, understand unspoken social rules, or navigate complex group dynamics can be mentally and emotionally exhausting. This is especially true when someone feels the need to mask their natural behaviors just to fit in. Executive functioning, which includes skills like planning, managing time, and switching between tasks, might require more conscious effort. Even seemingly simple transitions or unexpected changes in a routine can be highly stressful. Another factor is emotional intensity. Autistic people often feel emotions very deeply. In high-demand situations, this can lead to intense anxiety, stress, or even complete shutdowns. It's crucial to understand that many of these challenges are not inherent deficits, but are instead created by the environment. When surroundings are structured to accommodate these differences, the obstacles can shrink dramatically. One critical experience many autistic adults describe is something called autistic burnout. This isn't just feeling tired, it's a state of profound exhaustion that results from the prolonged effort of masking, constant sensory overload, and the relentless pressure to meet neurotypical expectations. The symptoms are serious: chronic fatigue, a sharp decline in executive function, heightened anxiety, and a withdrawal from social interaction. Burnout is not a sign of laziness or weakness. It is a legitimate biological and psychological response to sustained, overwhelming stress in an environment that doesn't accommodate you. Recovery is a slow process that requires deep rest, dedicated self-care, and, most importantly, the freedom to be authentic without the constant pressure to mask. Understanding the reality of autistic burnout really highlights the immense cost of forcing conformity and underscores the critical need for supportive, accepting environments. So, what kind of supports actually help? It's important to know that supports don't just mitigate challenges, they empower autistic people to truly thrive. In a classroom, for example, supports could look like providing clear instructions in both written and verbal formats, using visual schedules to make the day predictable and reduce uncertainty, offering quiet or low-stimulation spaces for breaks, and allowing for flexibility in how students communicate and participate. In the workplace, effective accommodations can make a world of difference. This might mean flexible schedules to help manage sensory or executive function needs, providing clear and direct instructions for tasks, offering opportunities for remote or low-stimulation work, and, crucially, recognizing and leveraging an individual's unique strengths and expertise. Whether in school or at work, the guiding principle is simple. Create environments that reduce unnecessary stress and amplify natural abilities. Emotional and social supports are just as vital. Having access to mentors, peer networks, and understanding adults or colleagues can help autistic individuals navigate complex social and sensory landscapes with more confidence. Building trust and providing consistent, predictable structures are key to reducing anxiety and encouraging participation. And while social skills can be nurtured, the goal should never be normalization or forcing someone to act neurotypical. The true goal is to foster comfortable and effective communication. Real inclusion means valuing authenticity, not demanding conformity. This brings us to a strength-based approach to education. This model focuses on identifying a student's interests, talents, and natural skills, and then using them as pathways for learning. For example, a child who has an intense interest in trains can learn math, physics, history, and even writing, all through projects related to trains. By harnessing these deep interests, we can boost motivation, build self-confidence, and allow autistic learners to truly shine. This approach recognizes that what society might dismissively label as an obsession is often the very source of passion and mastery. These same principles apply to the workplace and lead to incredible success. In adulthood, autistic employees often excel when they are given the space to focus deeply, follow structured routines, and work in environments that respect their sensory and communication preferences. It's no surprise that many thrive in careers that require sharp pattern recognition, meticulous attention to detail, or long-term focus. Think of fields like software development, data analysis, intricate design, scientific research, and the creative arts. Employers who actively embrace neurodiversity don't just do a good thing. They gain a competitive edge through unmatched innovation, loyalty, and unique problem-solving skills. Support also extends to families and the wider community. Parents, siblings, and caregivers play a crucial role by advocating for accommodations, understanding and respecting sensory needs, and honoring different communication styles. When a community fosters awareness, acceptance, and inclusion, it reduces stigma and creates safe, welcoming spaces where autistic people can participate fully and without fear of judgment. Ultimately, autism is not just a set of challenges to be overcome. It is a source of strengths to be celebrated. That sensory intensity can translate into artistic brilliance. That laser-focused attention can lead to technical mastery. And that unwavering honesty and principled thinking can transform relationships and workplaces for the better. When we start to see autism through this lens, we shift from a deficit-based model to a strengths-based paradigm. The goal isn't to make autistic people normal. The goal is to build a world that helps them thrive as their authentic selves. Now that we have a clearer understanding of the strengths, challenges, and supports, we're ready to approach the final and perhaps most important part of our series: voices, acceptance, and inclusion. Listening to autistic people themselves, learning from their lived experiences, and celebrating their unique perspectives is the ultimate key to true understanding. Acceptance isn't optional, it's essential. What autism really is and isn't. In this final part, we're going beyond definitions to talk about what truly matters: voices, acceptance, and inclusion. We've explored how autism is a natural variation of the human brain, a unique neurotype. We've seen the incredible diversity within the spectrum, its strengths, and its challenges. But to genuinely understand autism, we have to do more than just read about it. We have to listen. No textbook or diagnosis can ever replace the lived moment-to-moment experience of an autistic person. For far too long, the conversation about autism excluded the very people it was about. Experts described it from the outside, often framing it as a problem to be solved. But that's changing, thanks to the powerful rise of the autistic self-advocacy movement. Groups like the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network are championing a simple but revolutionary message: nothing about us without us. Autistic voices aren't just an optional extra, they are essential. When autistic people lead the conversation, we gain incredible insights into both the beauty and the difficulty of navigating a world that wasn't built for neurodivergent minds. This shift starts with the words we use. Language matters. You might hear the term autistic person instead of person with autism. Many in the community prefer this identity-first language because it signals pride in their neurotype, not shame. It's an integral part of who they are, not some accessory they carry. Others prefer person-first language. The most important thing? Respect. Just ask what someone prefers instead of assuming. What really counts is recognizing that autism isn't a label to be attached or detached. It's woven into the very fabric of a person's identity. This brings us to a crucial evolution in our thinking, moving from awareness to acceptance. For years, the goal was simply awareness, making people know that autism exists. That was a necessary first step, but it's no longer enough. The goal now is acceptance. Awareness says, I know you're there. Acceptance says, I value you just as you are. Awareness can sometimes focus on the differences that separate us, while acceptance builds a sense of belonging. Acceptance means actively creating classrooms, workplaces, and communities where autistic people can thrive without judgment or fear of being excluded. Representation in our media and culture plays a huge role in shaping these attitudes. For decades, portrayals were often limited to stereotypes, the disconnected genius or the helpless victim. These one-dimensional characters erased the reality for millions of autistic people. But today, that narrative is finally evolving. Autistic writers, actors, and creators are telling their own stories, showing autism not as a tragedy or a miracle, but as a normal, nuanced part of the human experience. When autistic people see themselves reflected authentically on screen, it's incredibly affirming. And when non-autistic audiences see these stories, empathy deepens and understanding grows. This empowerment fuels advocacy. Advocacy isn't just about speaking up. It's about changing systems. Autistic activists are at the forefront, pushing for real-world changes, better accessibility, educational reforms, inclusive hiring practices, and an end to harmful therapies that try to normalize people instead of supporting their growth. They remind us that autism isn't an epidemic to be cured, but a community to be empowered. The true goal is to ensure every autistic person has autonomy, dignity, and opportunity. And at the heart of this movement is community. Humans need to feel like they belong, and autistic people are no different. Online groups and in-person meetups have become vital sanctuaries, safe spaces to share stories, exchange strategies, and find solidarity. In these communities, what might have felt like isolation transforms into a shared identity. What once felt like a personal failing becomes a collective strength. This connection is the engine of empowerment, reminding every member, you are not alone. Of course, allies are absolutely essential on this journey. Teachers who create sensory-friendly classrooms, co-workers who embrace different communication styles, and parents who celebrate their child's unique way of being. These are the everyday heroes of inclusion. Being a true ally means listening more than you speak, learning continuously, and standing alongside, not in front of, autistic people. It's about amplifying their voices, not speaking for them. This groundswell of advocacy is slowly but surely influencing policy. Governments are beginning to recognize neurodiversity within human rights frameworks. Schools are adopting universal design for learning to benefit all students. Companies are creating neurodiversity hiring programs that tap into a pool of incredible talent. The progress is uneven, but it's real. The future of inclusion depends on this continued advocacy, on research that is guided by autistic voices, and on a cultural shift that sees difference not as a deficit, but as a strength. Ultimately, all of this comes down to empathy. And I don't mean feeling sorry for someone. True empathy is the active effort to understand another person's perspective. It's the bridge that connects the autistic and non-autistic worlds. When we meet each other with genuine curiosity and a willingness to understand, communication stops being a challenge and starts being a collaboration. Empathy is the foundation of acceptance, and acceptance is the foundation of a truly inclusive world. We also have to remember that autism is lifelong. It doesn't disappear when a child grows up. The support systems need to evolve across a person's entire life, from the classroom to the workplace, and into independent adult life. So many autistic adults say the greatest gift they could receive is simply to be understood. That understanding is what unlocks independence, confidence, and the power to determine their own path. In the end, the conversation about autism challenges all of us to rethink our definition of normal. It pushes us to question the rigid systems that reward conformity while overlooking unique forms of brilliance. Here's the beautiful part. Inclusion doesn't just benefit autistic people. It makes the world better for everyone. Quieter classrooms, clearer instructions, and more compassionate workplaces are good for us all. Inclusion is like universal design for humanity. Autism is not a disease to be cured. It's a neurotype, a different way of being, seeing, and experiencing the world. It isn't less, it's different. Every autistic person has a story worth hearing, a mind worth understanding, and a life worth celebrating. Acceptance starts with curiosity, it grows with empathy, and it flourishes with respect. When we stop trying to fix people and start trying to understand them, we discover the incredible diversity that makes humanity so beautiful. The goal isn't to make everyone the same, it's to make sure everyone belongs. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If this series has been helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that champions understanding and inclusion. See you next time.